When you see an Indian side with Ganguly in the lineup, you know it's game on. You don't have to like or dislike him, you just have to respect him. Those aren't the words of some devoted superfan. Nope, those are the words of Steve Waugh, literally one of the most formidable, uncompromising cricket captains in the history of the sport, talking about his absolute fiercest rival. Right away, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the immense respect and the incredibly high stakes that surrounded our subject today. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the complex, fiercely debated, and honestly, entirely transformative leadership journey of Sourav Ganguly. And we aren't just going to sit here and rattle off his batting averages, no way. Instead, we're leaning on some really fascinating academic research, historical accounts, and recent administrative data to unpack exactly how Ganguly completely reshaped an entire sporting culture, how he weathered some unbelievable controversies, and how he transitioned into a massive powerhouse off the field. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for The Explainer. First, we'll look at the aggressive transformational leader. Second, the iconic NatWest celebration. Third, building India's future champions. Fourth, the chapel controversy. And finally, his administration and security transition. Section 1. The aggressive transformational leader. Well, to kick things off, let's look at this genuinely fascinating piece of research out of Nova Southeastern University. The researchers there basically did a strict content analysis of 87 different articles from super prestigious publications, like the Wisden Almanac, to try and actively quantify the leadership styles of two contemporary giants, Steve Waugh and Sourav Ganguly. And the data, it revealed this brilliant contrast. Steve Waugh was categorized as an autocratic, result-driven leader. He was the Iceman, right? He shielded his emotions, focused incredibly narrowly on winning, and led purely by personal example. But Ganguly? He was coded fundamentally differently. He was a transformational leader. He wore his heart right on his sleeve, acting as this highly participatory team motivator to rebuild what was, at the time, a deeply distraught Indian team in the year 2000, following a massive match-fixing scandal. And looking at the exact data from the study, it literally codes Ganguly as a motivator. It's right there in the numbers. Out of 19 specific leadership codes found for him, the highest frequency by far was for his team-building capacity. That was followed really closely by his aggressive attitude and his highly expressive appreciation of his colleagues. So this proves his reputation isn't just some cricket folklore. It's a measurable, academically quantified trait. Actually, it gets better. He even used this emotional intelligence defensively. He famously made Steve Waugh wait for the toss in 2001 just to provoke him and win the psychological mind game before a ball was even bowled. Section 2. The iconic NatWest celebration. Let's move to and see how this builds into its absolute ultimate visual manifestation. Picture this. July 13th, 2002. Lord's Cricket Ground in London. The NatWest Series Final against England. Now, if you know cricket, you know the unbelievable tension of this match. India was chasing a massive target of 326, and despite a pretty good start, they completely collapsed to 146 for 5. I mean, it looked utterly hopeless. But then, two young players that Ganguly had intensely backed, Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif, forged this miraculous 121-run partnership. The drama literally went down to the wire. 2 runs needed off the final ball, and the ever-calm Rahul Dravid nudges the winning run. And then, up on the incredibly prestigious, historically very rigid Lord's balcony, Sourav Ganguly takes off his shirt and just frantically waves it in the air. So, what does this all mean? It's an image that is completely burned into the retinas of every single cricket fan out there. But I want us to pause for a second and think way beyond just the sheer joy of a win. What did this deeply uncharacteristic, seemingly spontaneous act actually mean for the culture of the sport in India? Because that waving shirt was so much more than a celebration. It was a calculated, visceral act of pure defiance. India had faced some intense criticism and skepticism leading up to that final. By mimicking a similar celebration previously done by England's Andrew Flintoff, Ganguly was sending a loud, unignorable message. The days of the polite, easily intimidated Indian cricket team, those days were officially over. It signaled a brand new, fearless Indian aggression. This was a true watershed moment that instilled a deep self-belief, especially for winning in really hostile overseas conditions. And it ushered in a completely new era where India genuinely saw themselves as dominant world beaters. Section 3. Building India's future champions. Now, all that fiery aggression wasn't just for show, right? Ganguly channeled it directly into mentoring rookies and building a rock-solid, resilient infrastructure for the future. He was, in a lot of ways, a classic entrepreneur of talent. To really understand his ultimate impact, former South African captain Graeme Smith offered this brilliant comparison between Ganguly and his eventual successor, MS Dhoni. According to Smith, Ganguly was the builder. He took the massive risk of introducing and then relentlessly backing raw youth, players like Yuvraj Singh, Harbhajan Singh, and even MS Dhoni himself, who actually debuted under Ganguly back in 2004. In contrast, Dhoni was the finisher. Where Ganguly was highly emotional and built the foundation from the ground up, Dhoni brought this legendary calmness that allowed him to reliably close out those tight games and actually secure the trophies. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Smith summed it up perfectly, saying, "If Dada had an MS-type player, his team was slightly more developed, I think you would have seen him win plenty more trophies." It's such a great observation. Ganguly did the incredibly hard, aggressive grunt work of changing the team's entire psychological mindset and backing young talent. He effectively paved the golden road that allowed subsequent captains like Dhoni to come in and harvest all those major international trophies.
Section 4. The Chapel Controversy.
Of course, an intensely emotional leadership style like that inevitably attracts massive friction. It just does. Let's look at a period of intense crisis strictly based on the sequence of events here, keeping things entirely neutral. The dispute kicked off during a 2005 tour of Zimbabwe. During a warm-up game, newly appointed coach Greg Chappell allegedly asked Ganguly to step down from the captaincy due to a pretty bad slump in his batting form. Shortly after that, a private email from Chappell to the cricket board claiming Ganguly was mentally and physically unfit to lead was somehow leaked to the press. And man, this led to a massive fallout. Ganguly was removed as captain and dropped from both the ODI and Test teams entirely. The reaction back in India was explosive. Over in Ganguly's home state of West Bengal, there were massive public protests. They literally blockaded rail transport, and there was fierce debate in parliament. Eventually, though, Ganguly managed to make a highly successful comeback to the team in late 2006, really proving his tremendous resilience.
Section 5. Administration and Security Transition.
So, let's fast forward from those fiery playing days to his present-day reality. Think about this. How does an emotionally driven captain pivot once his playing career is officially over? Well, in Ganguly's case, he didn't leave the sport at all. He just moved up to the boardroom. He transitioned into literally one of the most powerful and steady sports administrators in the world. He served as the president of the incredibly powerful BCCI from 2019 to 2022. Even more recently, in September 2025, he was elected entirely unopposed as the president of the Cricket Association of Bengal. On top of all that, he is currently the chair of the ICC Men's Cricket Committee. So he remains a massive, highly influential force constantly dictating the future of global cricket. Now, because of his massive public stature, Ganguly's personal security has actually often been a topic of public record. Just recently, the West Bengal government made an administrative decision to restructure his VIP security detail. Previously, he held Z-category security. To put that in perspective, that meant he was flanked by 8 to 10 police personnel and armed escorts at all times. Following a recent government reassessment, this has been scaled down to Y-category security, which provides him with about 3 special branch personnel for his protection. So the crucial point is, why the change? Well, according to state officials, this is a totally standard, wider VIP security restructuring. The allocation of security in these cases is based strictly on an individual's current constitutional position and an updated real-time threat perception analysis. Officials have made it very, very clear that this downgrade is simply a procedural alignment with current threat assessments. It is absolutely not any sort of reflection on Ganguly's enduring legacy or his massive public prominence in Bengal. It's just by the book. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've managed to quantify his emotional leadership, we relived that wild, fiery defiance on the balcony at Lord's, explored his totally vital role as a builder of future champions, navigated the stormy Chappell's era, and arrived at his steady boardroom administrative power today. It leaves us with a truly fascinating question to ponder. How does a leader who relied on such fiery, disruptive aggression on the field manage to transition into such a calculated, steady administrative force off of it? It's a real testament to the incredible, ongoing evolution of Sourav Ganguly. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we will see you next time.